Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Justin with the Weather Center of Manitoba, coming to you with once again our daily weather update here. The date is January the 9th, and we're going to start off the video once again looking at our Mesnet portal. And we're going to look at our current temperatures across southern Manitoba. And what we can see from this is that it is drastically warmer than it has been at all over the last probably several weeks. Looking at Melita in the far southwest corner, a little bit cooler at -5, but not bad compared to what we've been dealing with lately. If we look at the city of Brandon, we can see that the temperatures were very warm overnight. At about 3:30 in the morning, Brandon was up right around the freezing mark. Then temperatures dipped a little bit toward -3 around 5:30 in the morning, and then they've been creeping up ever since. And currently at 7:45, Brandon is at -1.5. As we travel east along the Trans-Canada, Portage is up above freezing. You can see that ever since, the early morning hours around 2 a.m. was -6. And then ever since, as the temperatures have been shooting up there, and now it's +1 in Portage. And Winnipeg, we can look at the Forks, and they've just been trending up, up, up as well. And through the morning hours, currently sitting at a temperature of about -4, -5. And even as we check in areas south toward Morden Winkler, we can see they have also came up overnight, and they're now sitting at +1 down in the Morden Winkler area. And so those temperatures are fairly warm across southern Manitoba. We even have, like I was just showing you here, some locations that are currently above the freezing mark, as we have these westerly winds starting to pick up as we have our system pushing east toward northwestern Ontario this morning. I was looking at some reports before starting this video here, and Selkirk, Winnipeg had about 1 to 2 centimeters of snow overnight. I think that was between 2 and 4 a.m. Currently, we can look at the current radar here, and there's not a lot of snow at the moment, because a lot of that has pushed through over, towards the Ontario border and into northwestern Ontario. But we can see that there are still some bands of snow, some snow squalls starting now north of Winnipeg and the Red River Valley up into the Interlake region, Arberg, Poplar Field, Fisher Branch, and then we also have a little bit of snow coming off of Lake Manitoba towards St. Laurent and the north sections of Portage. So if you will be traveling along the Trans-Canada throughout the day, just be aware that there's not going to be likely widespread snow, but as the winds behind this storm system this morning start to crank up throughout the day, there could be some snow squalls that pick up also with that wind. So you may be driving and then it's clear, and then all of a sudden you could run into, a pretty hefty band of snow, which will lower your visibility quite a bit and could cause some issues for a little while. So just be aware of that if you'll be traveling on the roads throughout the day. As we are expecting some snow, and we'll look at some model data here momentarily, throughout the day in, like I said, little kind of squall bands throughout southern Manitoba, which will likely impact the Trans-Canada, especially later in the afternoon as we reach those peak wind gusts. We can quickly touch on northern Manitoba, and it's definitely cooler across the north. We have our temperatures dropping as the cold front and those winds out of the north pick up across northern Manitoba. You can see that it's a total opposite trend across the north. Here's the paw. So they were actually quite a lot warmer at about 2 a.m. They were at the freezing mark, and now you can see they've been sliding since, and they're down to almost -7 up in the paw, Manitoba. Thompson is definitely cooling off as well. They were at a pretty steady trend of temperature around -5 until about 6 a.m. and then here comes the cold front, and now they're down to -10 in Thompson at 7:50. And up in Churchill, Manitoba, they have also seen their temperatures plummet throughout the morning. Started off the morning 2 a.m. about -11. Now they're down to -16 again at 7:50 a.m. So that cold front will be coming for southern Manitoba later in the day. So, it's nice. Our temperatures across the south are in some locations above freezing this morning, but we are expecting temperatures to be dropping throughout the day. Quickly touch on our weather alerts, or the lack thereof. No weather alerts in effect for Manitoba, and in fact, once again, across the entirety of the Prairie Provinces this morning. But I do expect probably some extreme cold warnings to be issued later in the day for northern sections of the province. But other than that, it should remain fairly quiet across the south, at least for the next 24 hours. So now what I want to do is touch on some model data here, because we have our storm system this morning that's exiting from southern Manitoba and Manitoba as a whole and moving into northwestern Ontario. But then what we're going to have is a separate Alberta clipper that we've been watching over the last several days that will be tracking from Alberta east across the prairies and coming into Manitoba for Friday night and into Saturday. So this is our current model data. You can see that here's our low pressure system that Manitoba was dealing with this morning, moving into northwestern Ontario, and parts of northwestern Ontario will be dealing with that band of snow that we saw across southern Manitoba this morning. But you can see, it's hard to see on the map, but here you can see these little kind of streaks of blue where we could expect those snow squalls that I was talking about later on in the day. And we're not expecting a lot of snow in those snow squalls, but where they do fall, there could be a quick few centimeters of snow that piles up, and then any snow that does fall later on in the day, the winds will be fairly gusty out of the northwest, which will be, one, dropping our temperatures, and then two, if there is snow falling with those strong winds, there's going to be some blowing snow, and it's going to be hard to see out there on the roads. So that's what I want to make sure everybody is aware of later in the day. If you'll be out traveling, just be aware of that. And then those snow squalls should eventually taper off as we get after sunset this evening and then into Friday morning. And then we just have some colder temperatures flooding back into the south for a little bit until we get our new Alberta clipper here, which already is starting to impact southern Saskatchewan by Friday late afternoon. And then by Friday late evening into Friday night, you can see that we have this band of snow that starts to push into western Manitoba and then eventually the entirety of southern Manitoba by Saturday morning. You can see that it's a pretty healthy band of snow, pretty strong low pressure system at 993 millibars, which is the pressure of the system. You can see that the snow will push into the Red River Valley and southeastern Manitoba as well as we get into Saturday morning. In terms of our snowfall amounts, we can look at that very quickly. And we can see that later this afternoon, here are the snow squalls that I was mentioning earlier. You can see in this band of snow squall, which appears like it'll set up just east of Brandon, between Brandon and Portage, so likely that Carberry, Austin, McGregor area, and then down toward Morden Winkler, there could be a stripe here of about 2 to 5 centimeters of snow. So you can see that it's not very widespread, it's actually extremely isolated, but where these snow squalls set up, there could be a quick few centimeters of snow. And then again, it'll be blowing around because of the strong winds this afternoon and this evening. And then that snow tapers off overnight into Friday morning, get a bit of a lull, and then our snowfall amounts you can see start to pick up here across western Manitoba Friday night into the early morning hours of Saturday. And then the snow continues to pile up throughout Saturday morning, looking maybe the amounts not as high as we were thinking yesterday. Yesterday, the models were showing maybe 15 centimeters of snow. We're not seeing that now. We're seeing Brandon in at 5 centimeters. Dauphin, maybe 5 to 10 centimeters into the higher elevations of the Riding Mountain National Park, and then maybe some enhancement as well south of Brandon toward Boissevain and the Turtle Mountains. And then it shows a pretty general amount of about 3 to 5 centimeters for Winnipeg, Portage, and then that eastern, southeastern portion of the province. And then also the Interlake region will be affected by this system as well, with about 4 to 8 centimeters of snow. That's our current high rapid refresh model. It only goes till Saturday morning, so there could be some snow that continues throughout the day Saturday that is not showing on this model because it only goes out 48 hours. But we'll continue to watch that as new runs of the high rapid refresh come in. This is another model that we've been looking at a lot if you've been watching our YouTube videos here, and this is the RDPS model and showing our temperature values throughout the day. You can see that our temperatures throughout the day remain really warm across the south. We reach highs of about -1 to -2 across much of southern Manitoba, and then you can see throughout the day that we have this cold air mass sitting across portions of the northern prairies, and that starts to sink south behind our storm system later in the day, Thursday, and then overnight into Friday morning. And you can see it gets quite cold, especially across northern sections of the province. Friday morning, likely lows between -30 and -32 across the far north and northwest portion of the province. And even across the south, we'll see lows overnight into Friday morning between -15 and -25. And then you see throughout the day, southern Manitoba warms up a touch, but the cold air mass just really sits right over northern Manitoba. And the temperatures do not warm up much throughout the day Friday. That's why I think there will be some extreme cold warnings in effect across northern Manitoba issued later in the day. And then overnight, Friday night into Saturday morning, we can see that cold continues to impact northern Manitoba. And then we see some warming across the south as our next clipper system slides southeast towards southern Manitoba for Saturday morning. And then throughout the day Saturday, looking like highs of about -10 across the south, and in contrast, highs across the north between -20 and -30. And then all this cold air that's bubbled up across the north really floods into southern Manitoba Saturday night into Sunday morning. So that's our temperature story. We can quickly touch on the wind chill values with these temperatures because they will be pretty cold, especially across the north. So here are our wind chill values as we go into Thursday night and into Friday morning. And we see wind chill values here between -43 and -45 across the north. Across the south, wind chill values are definitely not as cold, maybe getting toward -30 in Brandon, but generally -20 to -25 wind chills across the south. And then it gets even colder across the north Friday night into Saturday morning. And we see wind chill values here nearing -50 across portions of the northwest, portions of northwestern Manitoba. And then eventually those extreme cold wind chills will, like I said, flood into southern Manitoba for Sunday morning. And we see here wind chill values nearing the -40 mark across the northern sections of the Red River Valley and up towards Gimli and the western side of Lake Winnipeg. And then we also have some wind chills here between -30 and -35 up into the Parkland region of Manitoba, northwest of Brandon. So it's definitely going to get chilly again. We got a nice day or two here with some warmer temperatures, and then the cold comes back in for us later this weekend, and then again it'll stick with us looking likely into the early part of next week as well. And finally, I just wanted to show you what the RDPS model is thinking in terms of snowfall amounts here over the next 2 or 3 days across Manitoba. And we can see that with this first system, we have these snow squalls again showing up on the RDPS model, maybe 3-4 centimeters off the southern part of Lake Manitoba through Portage and then kind of over toward Eli. And then we also have still some squall activity maybe east of Brandon. So I do think travel later may be impacted along the Trans-Canada Highway, but again, the amounts aren't looking very significant by any stretch, but a few centimeters could be there. And with quite a bit of blowing snow later in the day due to the winds, travel could get a little tricky here and there. But hopefully it's not too bad. And then again, we get that break through the early part of Friday and through most of Friday, and then Friday night going into Saturday, we can see that we have snowfall coming into southern Manitoba. And the RDPS model has actually pushed the snow a little further east, now looking like Portage, Winnipeg, maybe in the higher amounts of snow, looking up like a good bet for maybe about 10 centimeters of snow through Portage east to Winnipeg, and then down towards Steinbach and Emerson, and then going in stateside. Still has Brandon in at about 10 centimeters, and then up into the Running Mountains, with some enhancements there due to the higher elevations, maybe up to 20 centimeters of snow. So that's what I have for you this morning on this January 9th day. Just be aware again later in the day of the potential snow squalls if you're going to be traveling along the Trans-Canada. Other than that, enjoy the next day or two of warmer temperatures before we get that next blast of snow on Saturday. Have a great day, everyone.